Hi, my name is Victoria Bedford. I am a spiritual holistic therapist aiming to bring awareness to healing and personal growth. Through healing my own traumas and the things that I have experienced, I aim to bring you knowledge and awareness with the things that I've learned along my journey that transformed my life, but also that has helped me to help many clients on my journey understand and connect to their body and connect to why they feel certain ways. So in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about tracing a trigger, and an exercise that you can do in tracing a trigger, and how this will help you to understand where your triggers come from, to understand why that trigger's there, to understand how to heal that trigger, and to understand how to become mindful in working through that trigger. So do stay tuned. Do follow me if you don't already follow me on YouTube. Subscribe underneath. I am also on TikTok and on Facebook under the Spiritual Hub, where I work to continue empowering people to heal. Stay tuned. So welcome back. One of the biggest things that we have to learn during our healing is triggers. Because if we don't become aware of our triggers, it doesn't matter how much we heal, we have the potential to slip back into behaviours that are self-sabotaging, slip back into behaviours that are disconnecting us from ourselves and disconnecting us from other people. And then we slip back into behaviours that lead us to feel low self-worth, behaviours that lead us to feel like we're never going to heal. Triggers is one of the main things in your healing journey that I invite you to explore. And it isn't something that you're going to get perfect, okay? We're human. We're human. We are here to experience imperfect moments that we will grow from. But what we're here to do is not be defined by those triggers and not be defined by those moments, so that, yes, there's going to be times that you're still going to get triggered. There's times I still get triggered. But those times are few and far between, and I am and hope to empower you to have greater awareness around the trigger. Bringing awareness is one of the biggest things to anything within your healing journey. Awareness to why you're doing something, or awareness to where it's come from, can greatly help you understand when you're doing it, because it's that awareness that will lead you to know that you're doing it. Because how often as people do we do something, or we get triggered, we didn't even know it was a trigger, we didn't even know we were triggered, and we've created chaos around us. And we're justifying that trigger. We're like, well, that person shouldn't have said that. It was that person's fault. They shouldn't have cut me up. It's their fault because they were moody. And the thing is, it's really easy for us to justify a trigger by blaming and transferring that energy to another. I mean, I spent years doing it. It's easy for us to justify it. And justification is one of the biggest things that humans do to stop themselves from recognising something they could heal. Because if we justify something, that means there's nothing we can do about it. It means, well, it's out of my control. It wasn't my fault. It was their fault. But that justification really is just a smoke screen for you to not face the things that you need to face. And there's some things that we can justify, of course. There's no black or white. You never not justify something. But it's about also becoming aware of what you're justifying. I can give you an instance where an ex-girlfriend can cut the tyres of a cheating partner and justify that was because they cheated. That person isn't going to feel good who slashed those tyres. They're going to have repercussions from the police. So while ultimately the behaviour that the first person did by cheating was extremely poor, the trigger led the other person to do something that may have been out of character, led them to do something that there's repercussions from that could affect their work, depending on what work they do. Or at the very least to feel guilt and shame because they're reacting in ways they don't want to. They're feeling something they don't know how to feel, so they're having to do an action. Because energy is emotion, well, emotion is energy in motion. And if you don't understand how that energy needs to go through emotion, and you don't become aware of your trigger, you will have a behaviour that is greater or destructive. It's greater than what had happened, or it's more destructive than needed. And we live in a society that justifies a lot, that a cheating partner deserves something like that. And we could run around and say, well, they deserve it. But who are we to say what somebody deserves? Because their behaviour has hurt you. Are you wanting to lower yourself to their behaviour? And this is not about taking the moral high ground. And it's not about, excuse the birds outside, I live by the sea. It's not about taking the moral high ground. It's not about believing you're better than someone else or pretending you're not hurt. So one of the things, the triggers that I realised, I mean, I never realised I got as triggered as I did by so many different things. But the definition of trigger, or the explanation of trigger, is when the behaviour or emotion is far greater than the situation. So that's not just a definition of a trigger. There's way more definitions, in the sense where you're internally feeling, you know, shame and guilt for something that feels quite simple, or you have a behaviour or action that is really spontaneously quick or really quite destructive. A trigger is something that you know you've behaved maybe irrationally, or you've behaved in a way that doesn't sit right with you. Or you feel an emotion that feels like you want to kill somebody, or you're raging, or you don't know how to manage it. And some common triggers are somebody saying something to you that you don't like. So somebody saying, you know, somebody saying something that makes you feel uncomfortable. And well, when we start to become healthy and grow, we can recognise that what anyone else says is an absolute reflection of them. And actually, I am going to act accordingly. I'm going to tell you that that's not okay. So somebody says something to me like, you're ugly. Okay, I'm really sorry that you feel that way, but you didn't have to tell me, or I'm not going to give you my time. Or the other way, we can get triggered and we go, who the fuck are you to tell me that I'm ugly? You look at yourself. And people don't realise that's a trigger. They just think, I'm just reacting accordingly. Reacting accordingly would be better for us as humans, where we react in a way that we can still regain some of our power. And you can't do this all of the time. But also, where you don't let other people control your emotions. Because ultimately, that's what triggers do. They give your power to somebody else or another situation so that you feel out of control in some way, whether it's through action or emotion. Some of my common triggers were being told to shut up by my partner. Shut up. Or I don't want to hear it. Or you're always kicking off. Those were my triggers. Now, whether he meant what he was saying, I could have then kicked off and said, you're the problem, you're this. But actually, it's for me to manage understand where's that trigger coming from? Why do I feel that way? Because right now, he's told me to shut up and I'm wanting to smash a plate. Or I'm blowing up, like, who the hell do you think you are? Or, you know, somebody cuts me up in the street and I'm screaming and beeping like, do you know your side of the road? Or a child tells me that they're hurt by something I've done and I go into deep shame and I overcompensate by, how can I help you? How can I? Instead of teaching the child that we're all human and we all do something that could potentially hurt people. Triggers. So first of all, here is an exercise that I want to give you that greatly helped my journey with understanding triggers. This is going to take months, and this is potentially going to be something that's going to take more than months. It could take years. It's going to take however long it takes, depending on how many wounds you have. If you have a lot of wounds from your childhood, such as invalidation, lack of support, lack of emotional connection, there was lots of shouting. If you have lots of wounds in your childhood, you're going to likely have lots of triggers. So depending on how many triggers I mean, I was uncovering trigger after trigger, and even now I'm in a real safe space, and I don't, in the sense that I don't have lots of triggers I'm not aware of. If a new one popped up, I'm able to recognise the feeling in my body, and I'm able to recognise I've got to do something about this. So this is something that's going to take commitment and consistency. If you think that this is something that's going to heal overnight, now it will get better overnight. The more you become aware of something, obviously the quicker it starts to transcend. But it still takes commitment to doing it and consistency. It's like picking a scab. Well, say you've got a scab that you're not tending to, you're not looking at, and that scab starts to fester and bubble, but you put a plaster over it and you don't clean it, but you keep trying to ignore it. Then you look at it and it's getting infected. Or you could bring awareness to it, where you are cleaning it, you are tending to it. The healing time is absolutely going to be quicker, isn't it? And you're going to hit a lot less complications over the healing time because you're becoming aware of it and because you're tending to it. So the exercise that I started to do for myself was, first of all, start to become aware of what a trigger meant. So a trigger meant an involuntary response emotionally. Okay, so that means that I might feel shame or guilt or anger inside, like an intense anger or intense sadness, or like I want to run away, or I want to hide, or I want to shout and scream, or I want to make someone pay. First of all, I had to recognise that, okay, so if I know that that's what a trigger is, we're going to start to do this. Second was slowing down. And what that meant is, every time I felt a sensation in my body change and I become aware of it, you can't always know in that moment, initially when you're first starting this work. So what happens is you allow the trigger to occur and then you go away, whether it's 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, whether it's that night, you go away and you feel that trigger and you sit with it. Why did I get triggered? What emotion was going on? And that's when you start to recognise what happened for me to be triggered. So, okay, I had that experience. What happened? Well, that person said something that I didn't like, or that person did something that I didn't like. Okay, where in childhood has this happened to you? Okay, so my dad used to always say things that were just really nasty to me, and I didn't have a voice, so I didn't get to say it back. Oh wow, okay, so now I know that actually I've never had a voice. So actually, when anyone makes me feel like I don't have a voice by telling me to shut up, or they try and shut me down, I'm going to get triggered because I don't feel I have a voice. So then what I had to do is, even if I felt the other person was in the wrong for what they said, I would go to the other person and I would say, I'm sorry for my reaction, but I felt that you were shutting me down, or I felt that you wasn't listening to what I was saying. And it's not about necessarily apologising for the beginning incident, it's apologising for your reaction. We have to take accountability with things. Again, if we justify and say, well, they deserved it, how are you going to heal? Because what you will be doing is you'll be justifying everything that occurs as if it's out of your hands, someone else's fault, they made you do it. Other people do things that lead us to have certain responses, but it is about how, not how perfect we become, but how balanced we become, so that, yes, we can allow sometimes we're going to be triggered, but we've got to reflect on it. How are we going to deal with it? Yes, we can allow ourselves sometimes to have those times where we're really, really down. Okay, process it, feel that down period, 2 days, 3 days of crying. Up you get. Let's do something about it. Is it out of my control, within my control? And this is about consistently committing to, every time you're reacting, overreacting, because it is an overreaction, and people will see it and that will make you worse, because you'll think, God, they're telling me how I'm overreacting, and you'll know you're overreacting and you won't know why you're overreacting. Each time sitting with it, feeling it and validating where it comes from, and choosing a different way of dealing with it. The more you do that, the more you take accountability, the more you start to become in your body, and you will start to recognise as situations occur. So if an argument's about to brew, you'll start to feel like, oh, I'm feeling that sensation. I'm going to have to do something different. You either don't respond in that moment, if it's a text message, if it's maybe somebody shouting at you, you may excuse yourself and say, I'm not talking about this right now. You may shut down and then go and come away and feel it and then go back and deal with it in a different way. Or, you know, recognising that you have to have a different way of dealing with it. That process will lead you to a different way of dealing with it. If you want to keep going through that process but not having a different way of dealing with it, then nothing's going to change. That means accountability. And that means accountability for yourself, but also accountability for them. Being able to find your voice. And it's not going to be comfortable. Finding your voice is not going to feel comfortable. The only way you're going to start to heal your triggers is by communicating with other people that actually, that's not okay when you do that. So even though my trigger was being told to shut up, I don't allow them to still tell me to shut up. I say to them, I'm not okay with that. I can recognise that that's a boundary. That trigger has created a boundary that I'm not okay with. Please, I don't want you to talk to me like that. And if you do, then I'm going to walk away until you can talk better. Or we can communicate properly, but I'm not okay with you telling me to shut up. And it'll teach you to have consistency in the boundaries you create. Because it'll also help you let some things go and you'll realise, well, that's out of my control, such as being cut up on the road. But it also helps you create boundaries. It helps you recognise, not to stop you from getting triggered, but to know that actually your self-worth and your personal growth is all about what what you tolerate and what you allow from others. And it's not just always about managing your triggers. It's about managing your triggers, dealing with them differently, but teaching other people how you deserve to be treated. If your trigger is people, your friend is always late, never texts you back, yes, you're going to have to learn to feel that trigger, feel that actually that feels invalidating, feel that that's come from somewhere, but then actually what do I want to do about that? I want to tell my friend that I feel like you don't value my time. Mate, you can't be late. If you're going to be late, I'm going to have to leave. Or, mate, I don't really have time to be answering the phone all of the time. That creates a boundary. They may not like that. They may not want to talk to you. They may throw their toys out the pram, but that's their problem. If you've communicated healthily that actually a boundary's been crossed and if they are anyone of a true friend, they will come back afterwards and try and work through it. And if they don't, they are not, unfortunately, deep enough for you to start having that healing journey with. And that's when you will start to lose people. Because what will happen is, those people who live shallowly, they're not bad people, because we once lived shallowly, they're not ready. They're not ready or willing to want to start up-leveling their friendships and relationships. Because working through your triggers is ultimately going to up-level your friendships and relationships. Why? Because you will be able to have a different level of honesty. You will also be able to enjoy knowing your boundaries. And also, you won't have to be, you will recognise your people-pleasing behaviour, and you will recognise people in your life that aren't willing to respect your growth. And listen, it can become a little bit of a lonely journey where you do have to learn that some people can be in your life but not going to grow with you. But that is a worthwhile journey to take if you are able at the end of it to feel comfortable in yourself, comfortable in your feelings, and actually not feel like you're the one that is always getting over emotional or angry or triggered. So again, the process of facing a trigger is, initially, it's after you've been triggered, recognising, why was I triggered? What was going on? What emotion was going on there? Where has that come from? Okay, you might not always be able to trace it back, but I'm telling you now, even if it isn't parental stuff, it could be school stuff, it could be ex-partner. You have to reflect in this way. And you may say, I don't want to. I don't have time for that bullshit. No problem. But if you don't, you will forever be the person you are now. Getting triggered, getting angry. And you will forever, until you change something, not change. So when people say to me, that sounds like too much hard work. Yeah, I hear you initially. It's hard work in the sense that you've got to connect to reflect on yourself. You've got to slow down and reflect on yourself. But what's the alternative? You spend the rest of your life being labelled the one that's always kicking off. Or spend the rest of your life feeling the emotions that you don't know how to manage. When you're up, down, up, down, up, down. Spending the rest of your life pulling away from people. What is the alternative? I know for me, yes, the exploration initially felt like it was, oh, you know. And I went through each different trigger, the trigger of how I was being spoken to, the trigger of how, I feel like I want to run away right now. No, running away is not the best thing to do. You've got to sit and you've got to feel it, and then you've got to go talk about it. Picking out your triggers one by one. 6 months it may take you on one trigger. Then you'll go on to another trigger. And I tell you now, if you start to work through your triggers, the main ones, and then the smaller ones, you will be able to live a life that you feel at peace with. A life you feel, God, I'm not so reactive anymore. I feel that there is times you're going to be reactive. Please believe me, you're human. There's times you're going to be reactive, and that's not a bad thing. We cannot not be perfect. We're not here to be like an AI. We're here to have human emotions experiences. But people who get triggered regularly, if you're anything like me, your experience will be dominating your life. Me, I was an emotional roller coaster. Nobody knew what they were going to get at any different time. Some people never seen that side of me, and I hid it and took it out on the ones closest to me. But internally, I was like an emotional roller coaster all the time, being really angry, pissed off, sad, emotional. So please do comment in the comment section if you have any questions. I have already done a video previously on triggers, but I always feel that it's great to retouch on these things and to reconnect to these things, because let's be honest, right? We're living in a society where we are wanting a pill to fix us, where we're wanting everything external to fix us. And we are now realising, there are some amazing therapists and things out there, but it's important that therapists are bringing the knowledge to people. As a holistic therapist, it's important that we bring this knowledge to you guys, because talking therapies are amazing. They have their place. All therapy has its place, but you have to do the work. Doesn't matter how much talking therapy you have, that therapist is not saving you. Doesn't matter how much psychotherapy you have, that psychotherapist is not saving you. It's important that you know that you have to do the work. Thank you.